Welcome back to the Suspect Podcast. And in this episode, we have a special guest, Tim Sheinman, or also known as Owlskip, famous for games like Family and Rivals, which saw its recent release on Steam. If you want to check out these games, which I would really recommend you do, the links will be in the description. And I'll just let Tim introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Tim Sheinman. I go by Alskip online as well, and I have been involved because he's a member of my Discord and was involved in testing Rivals. Before that, I made a game called Family, and then lots of other little games before that. So I've been developing for about 5-6 months now, but the game seems to be doing pretty well, and I'm sure we'll talk about them in more detail as we go.
Right. The date of recording is the date of the release of Rivals. So, congratulations on the Steam release of Rivals, and it's
Yeah.
doing really good. I've seen three reviews so far, which are very positive. So,
You mean journalist reviews?
yeah, journalist reviews. Yeah.
Yeah. It's what's the third? I've
Uh,
seen two. I
Wait, I
don't know
found
what
it.
the third.
Yeah. Wait, I don't have the. Wait, I didn't save the source.
It's all right. It's all right. You send it to me later. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Okay.
Not
Uh,
do it on stream, but yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so it's doing good, and it is a great game. So it is
Mm.
supposed to do good. And do you feel a different way that now that the game is on Steam, or is it the same thing as Family was on itch before?
On itch. All right. So brass tacks, as they say in England, it's not earning as much money on Steam right
Right.
now as
Yeah.
it is on itch, and I think that's because obviously because I was on Family was on itch, I got up quite a lot of followers on that. So
Right.
it's been quite easy to convert all of those people into buyers, well, not all of them, or some of them into buyers. So I'm actually doing a lot better on itch than I am on Steam, and of course, itch takes less of a cut as well. So it might end up that in at the start of Rivals lifespan, actually it does a lot better on itch, but Steam is such a massive marketplace that if we get reviewed in somewhere like Rock Paper Shotgun or something like that, which we did for Family, then
Right.
all bets are off, and I imagine Steam will take over as the biggest marketplace because most people will just click on their Steam link,
Yeah.
and go to it. So no, I mean I actually prefer itch in many ways because it's kind of nice and bright and colorful, and you get this little red bell when you get someone playing your game, and there's a better place for comments and stuff like that. And so I do actually prefer itch, but I also recognize that Steam is the biggest marketplace, and you really have to go for that. So it's all an exciting. What's the word? It's just an exciting experience.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to publish future games on Steam, or was it just an experiment, sort of?
Well, no, I mean, I think once you do that, you have to kind of keep going with that a little bit. I can't see myself, with smaller games, I will put them out on itch,
Right.
obviously, because it costs $100 to publish a game on Steam. You wouldn't ever publish something which you weren't going to charge for unless you were crazy or you had tons of money. So
Right.
I'll just put my little games out, my Game Jam stuff out on itch, which is the best place for it, and then for the big games, I'll probably put them out on Steam and itch and see how we do. But we'll see. We'll see how this one does on Steam. If at the end of the day it doesn't earn anything on Steam and it earns a lot on itch, I'll probably do it on itch. But we'll see. We'll see.
Right. So you talked about game jams, and I've seen Family was on the Summer Novel Festival. It was a submission for Summer Novel Festival,
It
and
wasn't created for Summer Novel Festival though. I stuck it in. Summer Novel Festival is barely a game jam. It's more of a kind of open exhibition of games.
oh,
So
okay,
there was not like a big theme. I just stuck it in. But you've got to understand Family is now kind of this quite big thing.
right,
It's kind of like an indie game that, I mean, it's not Papers, Please, but it's been reviewed in a lot of things. But at the start, it was absolutely nothing. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And I didn't know if anyone was going to play it. So I just stuck it into that game jam, because I thought a few people would play it
right,
just because of that. So in the end, it stayed in there. but that was purely coincidental. But my games before that were mostly done for game jams.
Right. So was the remains of Richard Fleming.
Um, I think it was, yeah. I think I submitted, yeah, I made 3 games, all of which went into game jams. I made them in about a week and a half, so all 3 in about a week and a half. So I was very tired. I think that Richard Fleming went into the Charles M. I Want to Tell a Story one.
Yeah,
The
I can't
Russian
tell you.
Doll went into a Brackies one, which I actually pulled it from that because there were some problems with it, but also because it was jam. And Whack-A-Mole came like 5th in itch.io game jam of the week.
Right.
So and before that, I think I had a couple at least that were in game jams as well.
Okay. So, would did you create these games with the game jam in the mind, or did you just did the jam just happen at the same time that you just wanted to make these games?
The themes, yeah, I mean, a bit of both, I kind of twisted it around a little bit, but no, I think mostly I just made them and I kind of managed to fit them into jams. But that was, with really small games, if you don't put them into a jam and you don't have a fan base, and family was still growing at that point, literally no one would have played it, So
Right.
but that was in the week just after I got the Eurogamer review. And that was the first big review that I'd had. So I'd had Buried Treasures and then I had Eurogamer. And that was a long time before stuff like Rock, Paper, Shotgun. So really it was very, very small. And if I
Right.
wanted anyone to play these games, I'd put them in. But I mostly just wanted to make them. And that's why I did it.
Right. So your game development streak, I would say, started mostly in February, and that's when you started making games, and you made a lot of games in a very short amount of time. So, would you say the pandemic or the lockdown was kind of like a push towards that productivity, or just trying towards to make the game because you had a lot of free time, or
Well, I mean, it gave me a lot of time. I mean, I had a business which wasn't doing as much business because of the pandemic, so it certainly gave me more time. But I wouldn't want to kind of give the impression that my, time is entirely free. I had, a small child, and I now have another small child. So I mostly started to do it to get ready for my course, and then it kind of, kind of went from there, and it's been a funny old journey the last 6 months. But I think the pandemic had something to do with it. But a lot of people, more and more recently, make quite a lot of the speed at which I work, and I have nothing to offer. I
yeah,
have nothing to offer. I imagine that if the pandemic hadn't happened, because I kind of work from home, I would have probably been doing all this stuff anyway. With the view to preparing for my masters, and I was
right,
definitely making games in February and early March at a serious rate
yeah,
uh, before the pandemic. So I don't imagine it might have helped a bit. I think what it really did actually is it stoked other people's interest. Is that people suddenly had a lot of time to play games
right,
during the pandemic,
yeah,
and I think that possibly has helped a little bit.
right. Uh, so you have these not common theme, but like a similar type of game that is the taxonomy game. Is that the right word?
Yeah, the most recent one. So I think there's a hard line to be drawn between um, the kind of early games that I made, which is like a typing game, and then there's some games called Smooth Operators, which are puzzle games, and then there's this, that, the other, and then where it really starts is with family. I would say there's four games in there, but there's really only 3 actually, which is Family, The Remains of Richard Fleming, Rivals, and there's actually a game I'm working on now as well, which will fit into that, and we call it Taxonomic. Yeah, so but taxonomy is a kind of like it's a posh word for a list, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Um, but essentially, what that comes down to is just a detective game that requires you to synthesize, to put together lots of bits of information, but can be solved. So just to give you some counterexamples, right? So LA Noire wants you to solve simple clues in order. They can be right or they can be wrong, but they all kind of one leads to the other, leads to the other.
Right.
Her story wants you to put lots of bits of information together and use your big brain to solve it, but it doesn't give you an answer at the end. My games do both. They want you to synthesize lots of stuff, but it will give you a correct answer. And in that respect, it follows on from Return of the Obra Dinn, which is why a lot of people call them Obra-likes.
Right. Yeah. So your game Family, which
Yeah.
was, did you make that game after Richard Fleming? I think you did.
No, Family was before Richard Fleming. So the through line between so Family, all the clues are text. Well, they're not strictly all text because technically the music is clues and also the radio has clues in it.
Right.
But the core of the clues is the text, right?
Yeah.
And then with Richard Fleming, I got more into doing audio stuff. So Richard Fleming is one where the clues and the audio interact with each other. And then Rivals took those lessons and blew it up a little bit.
Right.
And that's a mixture now of equal parts written and audio. So yeah, it's definitely that order.
Okay. Yeah. Family was free to play before, right?
Yeah, it was donations only. I've actually made the downloads cost now because there's a bundle with Rivals, but for the longest time, and it's always going to be free to play on the web as well.
Yeah. No, I just saw it and I thought because I remember downloading it and I'm like, I don't think I paid for the download, so.
No, it was originally donations. I actually did very well with the donations, but I wanted to offer it in a package deal with Rivals, so I had to charge.
Right. Yeah.
But I think most people who wanted to download have had their chance. And to be honest, most people who download will probably pay anyway.
Yeah.
You know.
So you got not a review. Will you call it review from Lucas Pope, the developer of Papers, Please?
Commendation, right? Yeah.
Right.
So I got a little props from Lucas Pope, which was cool.
Yeah.
The other Pope.
Yeah.
Papal blessing.
Right.
Yeah, blessing of the Pope. That was good. I liked it. I have actually been in touch with him a little bit recently. He said a few nice things about Rivals. He's going to play it hopefully in a few weeks when he's got some more time, you know. So that was nice. I mean, it's nice for, you know, the sort of people who it matters to.
Right.
But I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because, you know, Lucas Pope is so original, you know, that it's peculiar that games, you know, is very you go into some areas of games, right, and there's a million of them, like arcade shooters, retro stuff, platformers. There's literally a lo-fi poly stuff. There's literally a gazillion versions of that game, you know, and it's an incredibly saturated market. And then you look at something like Lucas Pope, who sold what 2 million copies of Papers, Please, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's only one of those games. You know, that's the extraordinary thing. You think, how is this possible? So I think it's probably quite novel for him to find somebody else, another solo developer who does the music and the art and all of that, sort of hanging around in his space, because he's probably been, I don't know what he's been wondering. He's probably not been wondering anything. He's probably just been working. But maybe in my mind, he might have been wondering, why isn't anybody else? You know, I've done quite well out of this. You know, he's won a BAFTA and all of that. You know, why isn't anyone else around here? So now I'm sort of hanging around like younger brother sort of character. So yeah, no, it's not. He's a very easygoing, kind of generous guy. Actually, he's not very guarded, so he does talk, and no, it's very nice of him to say that.
Right.
And of course, it mentioned in the trailer for Rivals.
Right. So that kind of reminds me of a conversation we had Friday, that you were saying that the junior developers and the senior developers have not a lot, but a bit difference in how they work and how they come up with games. Like you said, but like it's a think that junior developers or the new and upcoming developers, they don't try to make a new game. They just try to make a salad, I would say. Like this idea
Yeah.
and that idea, and I just want to combine all of this,
Well,
and
look,
let's
I
see how
mean,
it looks.
I have to qualify this that I am not a junior developer or a senior developer. I am a student,
Right.
and I think it's really important to say that. But I have been making art for 20 years in various forms,
Yeah.
and I was a musician, and I've written, and I've done lots of stuff, lots and lots of stuff.
Right.
And I think what I was trying to say there, which was those. All right, so when I was all right, so when you're writing a song, in some ways there's very little to a song. I mean, there's a lot to it, but what you really need is this kind of nucleus of something that just works. It's got to work. There's got to be something that has legs that can make it move. It might be a
Right.
beat, it might be a hook, it might be a title, it might be something that just kicks it into life. It's that little spark that turns it from an inanimate set of chords and stuff into something that actually means something. It's the difference between just stuff and art. On the face of it, there's not a lot of difference, but suddenly you can breathe life into it with the right kind of magic words that you can whisper, the right hook, the right this, that, the other, and suddenly it's alive. And I think what this, that comes back to is this something which I think a teacher said at some point, or I appropriated it myself, which is the idea that a want is not an idea. So you can want something, and we all do,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that that thing is suddenly going to start kicking its legs and, crawl out of the sea or whatever. It's not going to take on life just
Right.
because you really want it to. It has to have a little bit more to it than that. But what that is something you can only really understand through many, many years of making things and working out what the difference is, frankly, between the live frog and the dead frog, as it were, And so what we were talking about was a tendency maybe in younger people rather than younger devs, to say, I want to make this, and I want it to have this, and I want it to have this, and I want it to have this. And if I just want it hard enough and work it hard enough, it's going to come to life.
Right.
And that's just not true. That's just not true. And the sad truth is that people can end up making these terribly complex things because the intention is to add on more and add on more and add on more, but actually all you're doing is you're dressing up the dead frog. You're not
Right.
going to make it live, and so what I rather feel with family and rivals, and I hope this doesn't come across as conceited or anything, is that these games have a fraction of the technical capacity or whatever, the technical stuff
Right.
of most games, but there's something alive in them, and that's the same thing, in all art, and it's what separates it, and I think that it's not a terribly complex idea in Rivals. There's a lot of execution involved in it, but there's something alive at the center of it, and that's what makes it work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that took me a very, very long time. And I think even if you look at some of my earlier games, they're complicated, but they don't have that spark.
Right.
So that's kind of, I've made some sort of point in there.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So, I want to ask about a thing like saturation, right? Like there are a lot of developers right now, a lot of people trying to make games. So, is it kind of harder now than it was, let's say, 10 years before, to make something genre?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I mean, I wasn't there 6 months ago. You might as well ask me, was it harder a year ago? I mean, my inclination is to say no. I mean, like, I come from a background somewhat in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
So, like, and the music industry has really, in effect, ceased to exist in the last, year or so because, in 2009, we couldn't sell records anymore. So that was the main product of the music industry used to be records and live shows, right?
Right.
So 2009, Napster, Spotify, etc., 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 can't sell records anymore. Done. That's done. So you can play live, right? And now the pandemic comes along and you can't play live. So there's no music industry, right?
Right.
It doesn't exist anymore in any meaningful sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the games industry is totally different. We sell stuff. And because we sell stuff, we have a healthy industry that people are willing to pay for, because people are into paying for games, not paying too much, but paying a certain amount. And as a new game developer, I received a certain amount of appreciation that I've never received as a musician, which is a fan base and financial support. And family made back something like 4 times the amount of money it cost to make. So it's 100 quid. It made like 400 quid. But that was purely in donations. It didn't charge anything,
Right.
And I was reviewed in pretty much Europe's largest, software games papers, right? Not so much in America, but in Europe. Can you imagine that happening to a new musician on their first big release?
Probably not.
NME, Mojo, it would never happen.
Right.
Never, ever, ever happen, So what I would say is that, I don't know how difficult it was, but it is a really, really good time to be a good developer. Obviously being a bad developer is never going to get you anywhere, but to be a good developer is a very, very good time. And what I see is not only is there a lot of people who've done very, very well out of the game industry, but there's a large, what you'd call a middle class as well, which is people who do fine. They do absolutely fine,
Right.
and they're not the best, they're not the worst, but they do fine. And then there's also people who are really notable, like Joe Richardson, who made, Procession to Calvary, who make incredibly niche games.
Right.
And still managed to sort of keep it together. He doesn't earn a fortune, but he lives on it. And to me, that's the same place as like maybe music was in like the late 60s, early 70s. And what do we think about that time? We think it was a golden era. Why do we think it was a golden era? Because there was an industry to sustain its practitioners,
Right.
Now the music industry is, it's not even really an industry anymore, but the games industry definitely is. So I would say it's a really good time. And look, I mean, Microsoft just bought Bethesda, didn't it, for $7.5 billion just today.
Yeah.
There's clearly something going on here.
Right.
So that's my take is optimistic, but
it's a good time to be a developer right now.
Yeah. It's a good time to be a developer, definitely.
Yeah. But do you think something like Spotify can happen to video games? Like few years down, there's going to be a software like the Humble Bundle, but for indie games or something, like you just pay a subscription and you get to play as many games as you want.
Pirating. So this is an interesting question, right? Which is, was what happened with the music industry a function of technology or a function of culture?
Right.
So undoubtedly it was a bit of both at the start, right? So the technology of, having little packets of, being able to send MP3s over fast broadband, just nascent broadband was a new thing. But it wasn't really what drove it. What drove it was the fact that the music industry was charging $16 for a CD, and more for singles. And people were really getting bled dry. And then when Napster happened, Napster turned around to the music industry and said, look, you've got to absorb us, because otherwise you're going to be playing whack-a-mole with all LimeWire and all of that. And of course, what the music industry did. They sued everybody, which simply meant that all of these pirate sites just popped up and never went away. And they're still around now to some extent. I mean, the funny thing is I put the Rival soundtrack, and the Rival soundtrack is actually up on Napster because Napster still exists, in various forms. And so it's been absorbed in something else now. But, so to me, the music industry was very much what you'd call the canary in the coal mine, which was it it was the industry that really bought it. It really, really got destroyed by digital revolution. But then a whole load of, you know, industries afterwards didn't. You know, most notably being television. Now, television is perfectly piratable, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's generally not pirated. I mean, to me, that's because television now, people are charged a relatively small price for a glut of television in good quality, and it's just so much easier to get your telly the legitimate way.
Right.
And I think that with games, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The point, which is, I sell on itch, which is DRM free, right? So technically, anyone could be just sending my files anywhere.
Yeah.
And these are not big files; they're 100 megabytes. You can put them in a WeTransfer or on a drive.
Yeah.
Are people doing that? I suspect not. Probably not. I don't think so. Doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap. You might as well just pop on, get your own version, download it, and run it. That sort of thing. It's just and Xbox Game Pass and stuff. What's that? Few dollars a month?
Yeah, a few dollars.
I mean, that's really what we're talking about. But this is the interesting thing, which is what is the difference between Spotify and Xbox Game Pass? And the answer is that Xbox Game Pass charges everybody, and Spotify only charges some, and the rest is paid for by advertising.
Right.
Which means that musicians get a terrible deal, and gamers, I don't really know because of the way that Xbox is all the big titles, right? It's not really a lot of small titles, but generally speaking, I think indie developers kick on. They kick on just fine, and it's a competitive industry, and yes, people do go out of business and stuff like that, but generally it's doing a hell of a lot better than other places. And do I think that there's going to be some moment at which, we get in such fast internet that we can just pirate stuff in the blaze of an eye?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know that people really crave that. I think people did that because they were being ripped off left, right, and centre. And it actually, if iTunes had been around from the very start,
Right.
the music industry would still be the music industry. That's what I think.
Right. Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about the music industry. I'm a music guy.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah. No.
yeah.
That's I wanted to ask you about music for family and rivals.
Rivals,
actually. How did that come up? Like when you made family, was it that you made the music first and then you were like, I have to use this in a game, or I have to make a game around this, or did you make the music after you had the idea of family?
No, I made the music after I had the idea, and I think that's really, really important because I was talking about like, what is it that gives an idea life?
Right.
And I think context is really important for that sort of thing. Like you can say a lot of things about family and rivals, and you might like it, you might not. But what you can't say is that it's not completely contextual. Like everything is very, very specific to the game. It all feels handmade, doesn't it? There's no kind of like, oh yeah, that looks like something from another game, and the music is part of that. In fact, I came up with a concept for family really quickly, but the music I knew was going to be the engine of it. I mean, it was quite extraordinary. It's weird because I did manage to develop it quite quickly, but like imagine that you and me, right? And so you think, oh yeah, I could use this family tree to create this like Obra Dinn style puzzle. I think, okay, well, what are going to be the constituent parts of it? Well, I'm going to need, let's say we have 9 bands, right? So we're going to need 9 songs.
Right.
That's an album.
Yeah.
That's an album's worth of work, right? So, it was quite daunting to look at. And so now I just sat down and it did just come. It came a lot easier than I thought it would for reasons that I'm not entirely sure of. And with Rivals, it was very much the same. But no, I thought up the concept and then I wrote the songs.
Right. You talked about 1 or 2 songs in Rivals. Was it being a few throwaways from family, or was it just your normal songs that you use for Rivals?
Yeah, so I didn't write every single song. There were a couple that I had this is fair enough to say, which actually, you said, did I write them all for that? There were a few lying around, which were sketches that I was able to pull together from stuff. And I had this funny situation where one of those sketches ended, I'd written a couple of sketches for someone who didn't use them.
Yeah.
And then one of them ended up in, so I've actually been slightly disingenuous, haven't I? Which is like, there was some
Yeah, it's
stuff,
fine.
but it's not that I'd written that stuff and then thought I wanted to make a game around it.
Yeah, I get it.
It's
Yeah.
that as a writer, if you've been writing for long enough, you have a certain amount of stuff kicking around,
Right.
know, that you can repurpose. So I just repurposed Angelina for um, uh, for family, and I repurposed Susanna. And actually, I have some versions where they actually sound really quite similar to each other. So they were both part of a kind of an Americana thing, and then Angelina got moved across into synth pop.
Right.
So yeah, no, and there were a few songs. "Turn the Hands" from Family is something that was written before, and "Right on Track" I'd written a bit of for Rivals, and then I wrote the rest. But it's like 80% was written spec, and obviously I had to record all the instruments new as well as
Right.
do all the writing.
Did you scrap any songs for both of these games, or did you just?
Oh no, no, everything that was. Well, no, everything was used. That was the nutty thing. Yeah, it was
Right.
completely nutty.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just used everything I wrote. And it's funny, like some of the songs that like I wrote very quickly, like on in Family, I think there's a song by Clarice Montag, which is nobody's favourite, called "Juliet's Not There," but I quite like it, probably because I sing it. And I actually wrote that version, was a demo I wrote for somebody else to sing. They never sang on it, so I
Right.
just kept it. But it fit. And with Rivals, yeah, I mean, there were some songs which I just wrote, like "Kid in the Middle" is actually kind of like one of the best songs in Rivals. I
Right.
wrote
Yeah.
it super quickly. I think I might have even improvised the guitar and then had to write a vocal over the top of it, and then I sent it off to Riley to sing. So it's like came together super fast. But like, I think this is something I was thinking about today, which is a lot of people think that I'm like an oil painter, right? So they think I've got this like layers and layers of sketches and preparatory work, and then I sit down, I mix all my colors, and then but actually I'm not like that at all. I'm more like a watercolor artist. Like I do a little bit of light pencil sketching and then I paint the thing, so
Right.
actually, like, what I think, because the games are quite rich, they combine together like an oil painting, but actually I'm often sketching very, very fast, and I'm using what comes out. But that's what I discovered worked for me, which is that I used to be in bands that used to just work stuff over and over again, and it used to get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And that can happen in everything you do, is that if you get too self-conscious about it, it just starts to stiffen up and kind of harden as a piece of work, and it loses what makes it alive. And I found that as an artist, it's better for me to move fast and just sort of keep the muscle loose, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
rather
Kind of.
than stop and go, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Better not to do that. Better just to get on with it
Right.
and let it happen. And usually it turns out okay. Not always, but usually.
Right. So are you still making music apart from a soundtrack for games? Like I've seen
Uh,
an album. Is it an album? The
y-
one that's
well,
on
on
Spotify.
Spotify,
Yeah.
so connect to my Spotify. Yeah, I'm not really making music outside of it. No, I mean, I think the thing about music is that nobody listens to it. I mean, people listen to music, but
Right.
new music is very hard to publicize. So I made some instrumental records, and obviously I made music with bands for many years, and it's just a thankless task. No, I mean, I would never make music outside of games at the moment, because the music for Family people really listened to. They really listened to it. I got more attention for that music than I got for any music that I've ever made outside of games.
Right.
And it was just as good,
Yeah.
And that was the thing, if not better, it's some of my best work. So, no, I wouldn't make standalone music now, because I just don't think people engage with it, because the music industry can't really support art at the moment. It can't support anything. So I would want to stay in the game space, because that's where people are actually going to pay attention.
Right. So I want to wrap this up with your future idea that you're actually working on. Is it
Yeah.
the Forger?
Yeah, it's going to be called The Forges, or something like that. I used to really worry about talking about my ideas, and now I've found that without talking too specifically about them, actually, it doesn't matter because,
Right.
So it's going to be a detective game. It's going to be a little bit shorter. Well, it's not going to be shorter. It's going to be episodes. There's going to be 6 cases, I think. The first case I'm going to make free, and then the others I'll charge for the whole bunch. So it won't be like Hitman. You won't buy each one new, but
Right.
you can either buy the whole watch or you can play the first one free, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little more visual. Each case will have a different flavor to it. So there'll be different types of clues and stuff like that. But essentially what it will come down to is my kind of main sort of fascination at the moment, which is art forgery, which is, I think, just about the most if you're interested in investigating anything,
Right.
it's got to be one of the most interesting things in the world
Yeah.
for so many reasons that we can go into if you want to. But
Yeah.
basically, it's just a fascinating thing, and I'm gonna really enjoy it. The hard bit will be commissioning the artist, and it's gonna cost a bit of money. So
Right.
but I think we're gonna make a really good game out of this one.
Right. So is this like your method of work that you make a game and then you think of what you want to do next, or do you have certain ideas in your head that are bouncing around? You combine 2 ideas and then make a game, or are you just clear-minded and then you just come up with an idea and just get it done?
Yeah, sounds so stupid, doesn't it? People are like, what? You make games in 3 weeks? You think
Yeah.
up them and you just make them?
Right.
It's like, I have no excuse. Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, I can't remember like where I got the idea for it, but there's a show in Britain called Fake or Fortune,
Yeah.
which is where they take this piece of art and they try and work out if it's a real piece of art or not, and it's brilliant. I just wanted to make a game like that, like where you have to work out if a piece of art is real or not, but there's nothing very complicated about that. But I had it kicking around. I mean, usually about halfway through, usually as I'm getting to the end of a game and we're getting into the release, because that's kind of, I mean, you were doing the testing on Rivals. Rivals was
Yeah.
pretty much the game that it is 2
Right.
weeks ago, wasn't it? So, and then just went on holiday for a bit and I just started thinking about it. I think I listened to a couple of podcasts and I've got a really good book on it and watched some documentaries and stuff like that. So generally, yeah, that's how it kind of comes together. The big difference between my games and other people's games is that I don't get my ideas for games from other games,
Right.
which is why my games often resemble like a long form podcast or an oral history or something like that, is because they're clearly derived from a world outside of games, which is
Right.
brilliant because no one ever knows how much you're stealing.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, no, it came as a whole, but I've been thinking about it a lot. I mean, obviously when you're making a game, you have to make certain choices, and there usually comes one point at which I have to make a really hard design choice. And that has just happened. I've just had to make a really hard design choice, which I'm not going to talk about. And
Right.
now I think it's going to be pretty much plain sailing. So it's going to be very interesting. But I've got to find all the artists. So that's another big thing.
Right.
So yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about. I think you sent a link to a video about art forgery, and I haven't watched it yet, but
Yeah.
I plan to watch it. And it sounds like a really cool concept that you have to figure out if the
Yeah.
art is real or fake. And
Well,
doing that in a game is going to be way better.
Oh yeah, it's going to be brilliant. Like it's going to be, and you're going to submit like Richard Fleming, so you're not going to get 5. You're going to have to put in the whole thing at once. But they're going to be much smaller. It's going to be like what I want them to be is like little 20 to 30 minute like lovely things. So it's
Right.
about 3 hours of play, but it's just 6 separate things that maybe you do one a night or something like that. Like you could binge them if you want, but
Yeah.
but you know, so they're just nice and clean and separate and a little journey, and they're all going to be about telling different stories about art forgery, because there's actually a lot to tell, and you can go into things like looted art as well, so what art stolen in war as well, and stuff like that. So it's all going to be, it's going to tell lots and lots of different stories in there rather than just one story, which I think will be really interesting. And it'll do it more visually than Family and Rivals, which are very very oral. Yeah, no, it'd be good. I mean, the only other thing that I really want to make is actually something which I actually don't know how to make at all, which is that I really want to make a board game about. So there's this really good documentary on Netflix right now about how they prosecuted the mob in New York in the 1970s.
Hmm.
And they brought what's called a RICO. Do you know what a RICO is?
No.
So it's basically a conspiracy charge. So they didn't have conspiracy charges
Oh.
before then, but a conspiracy charge means that it rolls everyone into the same charge just by them being linked to each other.
Okay.
That's not terribly important. Well, what the point is that I really want to make a game which has 2 sides to it. So there's the lawyers / cops on one side, and that's like 3 players on one team. And then on the other side, there's the gangsters, and one's trying to build a case against the other, and the other is trying to dismantle it. And the way that you would do it is each person at the start of the game would get given a random flaw, right? So someone might have a drinking problem or a gambling problem or have done this or done that. And it's for the other side to discover who it is and use that as leverage against them, right? So you can kind of eliminate the other side slowly through discovering basically leverage against them, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I would really like to do. I actually don't really have the skill to make that game because asymmetrical board games are not something I have a lot of experience with. So I think I would have to either find some people to play a lot more of it with, or really spend some time, doing that sort of thing. But I feel like that would be a super cool spin-off of the sort of stuff I'm doing. So there's no reading, but it's still like you're building something. It's process driven gaming. So that I think that'd be a really cool game, really compelling. I was thinking about that a lot when the Mueller inquiry was happening. Watching, Mueller build this case against Trump and just thinking, oh, that's a game.
Yeah.
That's a game.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you sure I can put this in the video, because it's a really good idea, and you haven't started working on it.
No one else is going to do it. That's the thing. No one else is going to make a game about art forgery. No one else is going to make a game about the Mueller inquiry, are they? It's it's so unsexy. Everyone wants to make 2D retro platformers, and fine. And if they do, I'll fucking kill them. So we can use this, can't we?
Yeah.
No, if they do it, I'll just be glad because I'll get to play it and I won't have to have made it. That'd be great. I should do this more often.
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? If I could just if I was like Jonathan Blow and I could just put ideas out in the world and other people would do them. Be like
Ghost
a guru
game
of
designer,
gaming. Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, a purely conceptual game designer. I don't make them at all. I just create the ideas. So that'd be cool. So that's me. So we'll see. But mostly I've got to do the course as well and get a job. Got to get a job.
Yeah.
So that's.
So I actually wanted to ask you about the live stream or the course about how you make these family-like games. I'm gonna start calling it family-like rather than Uber-like.
Oh right, so I was talking about maybe doing something every second Friday or something. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be specifically how I make these family games, but it'd be nice to make a UI-based game, so using Canvas and just something where you have to do something. I mean, I did it on Sunday making that game. What was it? I can't remember what it was called. Like Saving Mr. Tiddles, was it?
Yeah,
Finding Mr.
Finding
Tiddles.
Mr. Tiddles. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of joy in those sorts of games, just to set up something where you've got a picture of a cat and a description of a cat
Yeah.
and some nice music and the background changes color.
Right.
Why can't that be a game? That's a game,
Yeah.
isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
I have another side. You've played Whack-A-Mole. You know,
Yeah.
I have another side to me.
Right.
That's the thing. Is like I would actually kind of the thing which I'm really meant to be doing right now is like making Whack-A-Mole for mobile.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like that's like my wife like occasionally comes in and says, "Where are the moles?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, and
Soon
she's
on the
like,
phone.
How
Yeah.
how are we gonna make $1 million if you
Yeah.
don't make the moles? I'm like, you know, there's no money in mobile, and she's like, no, there's money in mobile. There's no
Right.
money in mobile. Which is the crazy thing. Like everybody literally thinks that if you make a mobile game, you are minted,
Yeah.
and it couldn't be further from the truth. No one pays for mobile.
Actually, yeah.
You know, I would never make a penny from mobile unless I managed to do microtransactions
Right.
really successfully. But for instance, creating a whole set of mole outfits, you know,
Yeah.
that's just an idea. Just putting that out there,
Yeah.
you know, so they could dress up as Victorian adventurers or
Yeah.
cavemen, you know, that'd be good.
Works.
But yeah. So no, I kind of like that. I think yeah, it'd be nice to do like every second Friday. Just okay, here's an idea someone's given me during a week. Let's just sit and talk about how we're going to do this. You know, let's just
Right.
make a game in a couple of hours every couple of weeks, because games do not have to take forever. They do
Yeah.
not have to take forever.
Actually.
And
yeah.
finished things are different to unfinished things. They're actually just totally different. You know, even if you finish something, as long as it's not completely broken, it's actually totally different to something which is unfinished.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Kind of
Kind of, yeah.
philosophically, it's different.
Right.
Well, it's like you draw something and you say, this is finished. It's totally different to you saying, this is an unfinished drawing. Because in my mind, I'm imagining, oh, what more could this be? You know,
Yeah.
where is this going? That sort of thing. You know, I have that uncertainty. I'm never quite sure what my experience should be. But if you're like, this is finished, you're like, okay, I can now make up my mind about what that thing is. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So it'd be nice to just do something, finish something every second Friday. That'd be really
Yeah.
cool. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it. We'll see.
Yeah.
My Fridays are pretty open at the moment, but yeah. But
Yeah.
I hope to see you down there.
Yeah. Sure. That about does it for this episode. It was really great having a conversation with Tim. And again, I would really recommend you to play the games. The links will be in the description, along with the links to the soundtrack to the games, as well as the Twitch channel for Tim for possible future game development live streams. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. I hope to see you soon.